I recently reviewed the ThinkPad P14s Gen 5 AMD with a high-res OLED screen. It's a compact workstation with plenty of power and great creature comforts. There's enough grunt and memory to tackle 4K video editing, large-scale coding, and as much CAD work as its integrated GPU that identifies as having 8 gigs of VRAM can handle. It can do most any productivity task with grace and aplomb, but in today's economy, who the hell cares? Let's play some games.
Slap Tech.
The only PC game I really need to play to get a good idea of its capabilities is Snake Pass. If a laptop can play this game in high details at 1200p and 60 frames per second, it can play anything well, but the ThinkPad can't draw enough water from the well of teraflops. Not that this is a bad experience by any means, but it doesn't bode well for newer, prettier games. Thankfully, only the detail levels need to be set to medium to get a perfectly smooth 60. That's more than I can say for thin and light laptops with the same GPU that only deliver half the power. Doom Eternal is a game that some laptops with integrated GPUs can't even boot, but this one sure can thanks to the most powerful Radeon 780M on the market and 8 gigs of imaginary VRAM. Here in 1200p in the medium details preset, you'll get perfectly smooth frame rates when wandering around most environments and scarcely populated skirmishes. It's the extra large maps with hordes of foes that will make you want to tone down the lighting effects. With just a couple more key boxes unchecked, the picture will go back up to 60 on a much more consistent basis. Keep in mind this is only for when using a controller. 40 FPS is actually not a big deal when using a mouse and keyboard in single-player games. Next up is Shadow of the Tomb Raider. We'll keep our expectations low but the details in medium and start at 1000p. Wandering through the Peruvian jungle nets us a not half bad mid-40-ish FPS. It's a very playable frame rate, but it's not a perfect frame rate. Moving down to the low details preset helps quite a bit and lets us dance around 60, which is very acceptable. If I wanted to come as close as I ever will to controlling a strong, independent woman, this is how I do it. Next in line is Valheim. It's a simpler game but still requires quite a bit of oomph to play at max details. But we're not in max details, this is low with a bit higher draw distance and grass. Here in 1200p the gameplay isn't half bad since it's a slow-paced adventure, but it's definitely not smooth. Reducing the res to 1000p does help, but since the nature of Valheim keeps the graphics on strong with little remorse for spare CPU cycles, thermal throttling is going to rear its ugly head sooner than with the previous PC titles, believe it or not, and this laptop loves to throttle firmly at 82 degrees. Now let's boot up Trials of Mana. This game might use Unreal Engine 5, but its reluctance to utilize all of the intensive lighting effects make it a perfect candidate to demonstrate how the throttling affects frame rates. When the max frame rate is set to 120, the motion gets all kinds of jittery, even if it consistently posts over 60 FPS. When the frame rate cap is set to 60, the temps stay just below 80 degrees at all times, and it's smooth as butter. Thanks for the demonstration, whorish wizard-type character. Let's move on to the next game. Quake 2 in all its remastered glory runs damn near perfectly at native res. If more games played as well as this in their lowest detail settings, the world would be a much better place. Frame rates will dip a little bit when multiple flash bags are on the screen, and the ThinkPad will throttle, but it won't disrupt the flow like previous games in this video, and while possible to notice, won't be annoying. However, extreme videophiles like myself will want to play at only 1200p where perfection is attained. This is also a good time to point out that the OLED screen on this laptop is a true-blooded OLED with very little ghosting and close to zero input lag. I never thought I'd say this, but one of the best ways to enjoy Quake 2 is on a ThinkPad. Retro games are also hugely enjoyable thanks to the lack of ghosting and input lag. With plenty of CPU power to go around, any common system is no sweat. Speakers placed on polar opposites of the body ensure immersive stereo separation and more than decent volume and clarity. Without dedicated VRAM, it's subject to slightly more stuttering with the latest 3D systems, but only initially, and gets out of the way very quickly. The only category it has its foibles in is battery life. I wouldn't expect this laptop to stay awake for more than 2.5 hours playing complex 3D retro games, and 2D retro games will drain it in 4. If you're going to spend a long time away from any perturbed wall face, you'll have to employ some strategery to figure out how to use your time. For the bottom line, this ThinkPad P14s is very close to a bona fide gaming machine. It has plenty of horsepower and a beautiful 120Hz screen for older and less graphically intense titles, but trips over itself in modern 3D games by introducing jittery motion when throttling and lacking dedicated VRAM. Personally, I don't care. I'll gladly lower the resolution and detail levels so that it doesn't throttle. Just give me that gorgeous OLED screen, sturdy light frame, and super comfortable peripherals. In conclusion, should you buy it for gaming? No! With a price tag of $1,500 for the OLED model, get an Asus G14 instead. If you can stand how ugly it is, it'll do everything the P14s can, plus it has a dedicated GPU. This has been Playing Games with the ThinkPad P14s Gen 5 AMD OLED here on Slap Tech. I also have a full review of this laptop on my channel. Watch that too, then like and subscribe. Well, you don't have to watch it first and then like and subscribe. You can like and subscribe first before you watch the review, please. More laptop reviews are on their way. I'm finally making my way to this little guy right here. Thanks for watching, and you guys, have a good night.